Last night, a friend dragged me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. The kind of night where the air is thick with the smell of stale beer and dim lights flicker just enough to make every shadow seem like it's watching. After a few drinks, enough to warm the nerves but not blur them, I reached into my pocket and froze. My phone wasn't there. Mild panic set in. I checked the small table we'd been sitting at, pushing aside empty glasses and crumpled napkins. Nothing. I retraced my steps to the bar counter, scanning the sticky surface and peering behind stools. Still nothing. I pushed open the bathroom door, its hinges creaking in protest, and stepped inside. A single overhead light buzzed quietly, casting a pale flicker across the floor. Empty. No sign of my phone anywhere. I borrowed my friend's phone, already resigned to what I thought was the inevitable. I dialed my number. It rang once, then twice, and someone answered. But they didn't speak. Instead, I heard it, soft and hoarse, like air dragging across dry leaves. A low, raspy giggle. It lingered for a second too long. Then they hung up. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my stomach tightening. I called again. No answer. Again. Nothing. Whoever it was had vanished behind the silence. Eventually, I gave up. The bar lights felt too dim now, and every glance felt like it lasted a heartbeat too long. I told myself it was just someone messing around. Wrong place, wrong time. I thanked my friend and headed home. The walk back was quiet. Too quiet for a Friday night. Streetlights flickered in and out as I passed, the occasional gust of wind rustling dry leaves along the sidewalk. I unlocked my front door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me twice. The house was still, the kind of still that makes you hesitate to breathe too loudly. I went straight to my room, more tired than worried now. And there it was. My phone, sitting neatly on the nightstand, exactly where I always leave it. Right where I know I left it before I went out.
When I was a kid, I was always the last one the bus driver picked up on the way to school. My house was on the edge of town, past the rows of trimmed hedges and quiet driveways, out where the sidewalk just kind of stopped. One morning, I stood alone at the end of my driveway, the sky still a dull gray blue, the kind of morning that feels like the world hasn't fully woken up yet. The usual sounds, birds, wind, distant traffic, were absent. Just me, the cold air, and the distant hum of an approaching engine. A yellow school bus rolled into view, tires crunching softly over gravel. But something felt off. Through the windshield, I saw rows of empty seats, not a single kid inside. The bus pulled up with a hiss of brakes, and the door folded open with a metallic groan. The driver smiled. But it wasn't the driver I knew. He was wearing the uniform, sure, cap tilted just right, name badge glinting faintly in the weak light. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. They were dull and too wide. The skin around them barely moved, like his face had forgotten how to match his expressions. "Hop on," he said cheerfully, nodding toward the steps. I didn't move. My stomach sank. Something about his tone was wrong, too upbeat, like he was acting in a play. I glanced at the empty seats. "Where are the other kids?" I asked. "We'll get them now," he replied smoothly. Just get on." I took a half step back. He leaned a little closer from his seat, one hand still on the steering wheel, the other gesturing toward the open door. "Come on now, don't be difficult. You're going to make us late." His voice had turned firmer, less playful, still not angry, just wrong, too calm, too rehearsed. I shook my head. "No, I'll wait for the real bus." His smile twitched slightly. For a moment, he just stared. Then he gave a casual shrug, pulled the door shut, and the bus eased back onto the road, slowly, like it didn't want to seem in a rush. A few minutes later, another bus came around the corner. This one had kids in it, heads bobbing, backpacks bouncing. My usual driver gave a friendly wave, the same one I saw every morning. I climbed aboard, feeling the normal rhythm return like a familiar tune. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just a substitute driver, a route mix-up, something simple. That night at dinner, I mentioned it to my parents. I thought it'd be a funny little story, maybe even earn a laugh. But they didn't laugh. They froze. My mom put down her fork. My dad asked me to repeat what happened, slowly, word by word. I watched as the color drained from their faces. Without saying anything to me, they got up and went to the phone. I heard whispered conversations, urgent tones, the occasional raised voice behind the closed door of my dad's office. Looking back, they were worried. More than worried, they were scared. That night, they checked all the locks, twice. My dad even dragged a chair in front of the front door and sat there, half dozing with a baseball bat beside him. They never told me what they learned from those phone calls, and no one ever mentioned that bus again. But sometimes, even now, I'll dream about it. Yellow paint faded to gray, empty seats creaking in the dark, and a driver's eyes that stare just a little too long, waiting for me to step inside.
A few years back, I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had just bought the place and spent months renovating it from top to bottom. New flooring, fresh paint, modern fixtures. It looked brand new. He tried to sell it but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. At first, everything felt normal. Quiet building, decent neighbors, except for the lady next door. There was something wrong about her. She looked like she was in her early 50s, but her body moved like someone twice that age. Skin pale and loose, sunken eyes that barely blinked. She always seemed to be sitting in the dark by her window, the glow of a radio dial casting just enough light to show her silhouette. She stayed up every night, listening to loud Christian radio shows, rambling and yelling back at them like she was having full conversations. At first, it was just strange. Then it started to keep me up. Night after night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her shout about demons and salvation like she was possessed. Finally, I had enough. I knocked on her door one evening, just wanting to ask her, politely, to turn it down. She opened the door halfway, and I immediately wished I hadn't come. Inside, her apartment was a nightmare. The walls were covered in crudely painted crosses, dozens of them, in red, black, green. The words Jesus, angels, and strange Bible verses were scrawled across every inch like a child had gone manic with a paintbrush. The windows were completely blacked out, not a single ray of light allowed inside. It smelled like mildew and something worse, something rotting. The carpet was ancient and yellowed, soaked in damp patches and stained with age. Dog feces littered the floor, and cockroaches scattered across her feet when she shifted. But there was no dog, just the mess. I asked her,
quietly, carefully, to please turn down the volume at night. She stared at me. Her eyes didn't blink. Her mouth didn't move. She just stood there, silent, face expressionless. Then she slammed the door in my face. A second later, the radio volume cranked even louder. The next night, my girlfriend stayed over. We tried to ignore the noise, wrapped in the sheets, pretending none of it existed. But sometime past 2 a.m., I woke up with a start. Something was wrong. The room was heavy, like the air itself had changed. And that's when I saw her. A shadow stood beside the bed, not moving, not speaking, just staring. I thought I was dreaming, maybe a trick of my tired eyes in the dark. But then she whispered, "You should lock your doors at night," she said softly. My heart dropped. She was real. She was standing there, inside my apartment. She was holding something in her hand, but in the dark I couldn't make it out. She turned slowly and walked out the door like she belonged there. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I bolted the door shut, stacked furniture in front of it. Every creak in the floor made my pulse spike.
The next morning, I heard strange sounds outside. Low muttering, rhythmic and strange. I peeked through the blinds. She was beneath my bedroom window, barefoot in the dirt, chanting to herself in a language I couldn't understand. She clutched a plastic grocery bag to her chest, swaying. The bag sagged in the heat, its shape odd, sagging, bloated. Then the smell hit me. It was death, rot, something long past gone. Inside the bag was her dog, or what was left of it. I was done. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran upstairs to another neighbor's apartment and begged to know what was going on. The guy was pale, sweating. "She broke into my place once," he said. "I was watching TV with my kids, got up to grab snacks, came back, and she was behind the couch, just standing there, watching." "What was she holding?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "A power drill." That's when it clicked. That was what she had in her hand when she stood by my bed. That cold, hard shape I couldn't make out. I suddenly felt sick. I called the cops. They knew exactly who I was talking about. The dispatcher didn't even ask for the address twice. "Yeah, we're familiar with her," they said. She was a violent schizophrenic, hadn't taken her meds in years. But they couldn't do anything, couldn't enter her place, couldn't remove her. She owned the apartment. The only way they could intervene was if she stepped outside. So I waited. 2 straight days I sat by the window, watching, barely sleeping. Every sound made me flinch. I didn't let my girlfriend come over. I didn't leave the apartment, just sat there waiting. At 4 a.m. on the 3rd night, I saw her step out, shuffling across the street to the 7-Eleven for cigarettes. I called it in. They were there in less than 2 minutes, 3 patrol cars and a special unit van. I watched through the blinds as they moved fast, quiet. She didn't resist. They gently pinned her arms and led her into the van like they'd done it before. The door slammed shut. And just like that, she was gone. It was like she had never been there at all. The building felt lighter, brighter, but I didn't sleep that night, or many nights after. Even now, sometimes I'll wake up and feel something beside the bed, a shadow, a whisper, my pulse pounding. And in the back of my mind, I'll always wonder, How long was she standing there? And what would have happened if I hadn't woken up? I was about 10 minutes away from wrapping up my night shift at work when I heard it. A deafening crash, sharp and sudden, that echoed through the empty building like a gunshot. Instinctively, I shot up from my chair, heart hammering, and headed toward the sound. One of the front office windows had been shattered, glass everywhere. A rock the size of a grapefruit lay in the middle of the floor, surrounded by shards sparkling under the harsh overhead lights. The thing had been hurled with serious force. That alone was unsettling. But what made it worse, what twisted my stomach into a knot, was the location. I was working in the industrial district, late at night. Every surrounding business had long since closed. No foot traffic, no reason for anyone to even be in the area. I did a quick scan of the darkness outside, but saw nothing but the stillness of the empty streets. No movement, no sound, just the low hum of the building's fluorescent lights and my own pulse in my ears. Trying to keep calm, I returned to my desk and called security. I left a quick message, just a heads up about the damage, then grabbed my stuff and headed out. But the moment I stepped outside, the air felt colder, heavier. The walk to my car turned into a brisk jog, then a sprint. Every step felt like something was behind me, just out of sight. I slammed the car door shut, shoved the key into the ignition, and tore out of the lot. Only after I was halfway home did the panic start to fade. My breathing slowed, my grip on the wheel loosened. That's when something clicked. I hadn't unlocked the car when I got in. My hands tightened around the wheel again. I was certain I'd locked it before my shift. Habit, always. And I never unlocked it before getting in. But the door opened instantly when I grabbed the handle. Trying to stay calm, I reached one hand behind me and ran it across the back seat, slowly, carefully. Nothing. No one there. I let out a shaky breath. Probably just forgot to lock it. Long shift, tired brain, that's all. Fast forward about 20 minutes. I'm at home, still a little shaken, and I call up a friend to distract myself. He says he's out drinking, and I figure, why not? I could use a beer and some company. I grab my bike and head out. The night's cool still. The moon hangs low, casting silver light across the empty road. I'm pedaling slow, coasting a little, letting the tension roll off me with the breeze. Then I hear it. The soft, rhythmic click of tires behind me. Another bike. I straighten up and edge to the side of the road, assuming someone else is just out for a late ride. The rider pulls up alongside me and slows down. He turns to look at me and smiles. But there's nothing normal about that smile. It's wide, too wide. His lips stretched thin, teeth slightly bared, like he's holding in a laugh, or something worse. His eyes are fixed on mine, unblinking, wild. There's something broken behind them, something that doesn't belong in a human face. It hits me like a wave of ice. I recognize the bike. He's riding my mom's bike. I slam on the brakes, barely keeping my balance as I jump off and sprint home like my life depends on it. When I get there, gasping and drenched in sweat, I race around the side of the house. Her bike is gone. I turn toward my car. The back left door is hanging open. I hadn't opened that door. I hadn't touched it. I was driving, alone. I stand there frozen, every hair on my body standing on end. My mind races, replaying the night over and over again, trying to figure out when, how, why. The bike, the window, the unlocked door, and that smile.
I shut the car door slowly, hands trembling, and lock it. But I don't sleep that night. And for weeks afterward, every time I sit in the driver's seat, I check that back seat. Twice. Because now I can't stop thinking. What if he was already in there? What if he wasn't trying to break in? What if he was trying to leave?
I worked the night shift at a quiet campground, midnight to 8 a.m. every night. It wasn't a bad gig, peaceful mostly. I'd bring my PS4, set it up on the little desk in the tiny foot-by-foot shack I stayed in, and game away the hours. On the busiest nights, maybe 1 or 2 people would show up, usually half drunk or lost. But most nights, it was just me. Just me. And the dark. The shack sat isolated, surrounded by pitch-black woods, with only a single dim light above the door. Beyond that light, just shadows and silence. Not a soul for what felt like miles. On my first week, the guy I was replacing on third shift, he was on his way out, told me something odd before he left. Said it like it was no big deal. "There's this old payphone," he said, pointing out past the window, few feet from the shack. "It rings once every night, exactly 4:17 a.m. Just once, never more." He shrugged. Probably some automated test call. I never answered it. I laughed it off at the time. Ghost stories for the new guy. That summer, I kept the windows shut most nights. AC running, bugs chirping loud outside. If the phone rang, I didn't hear it. But then August hit, and the heat got unbearable. I started leaving the windows open at night, just to let in a breeze. That's when I heard it for the first time. Ring. Exactly 4:17 a.m. every night. One single ring. Never a second. And it did sound strange, not like a regular payphone. It had this wet, muffled quality, like the sound was coming from underwater. Distant. Wrong. Curiosity built up, slowly at first, like an itch. By the end of the month, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. So I set an alarm for 4:15 a.m., just to be ready. I stood out by the phone in the damp, quiet dark, watching the glowing red digits on my watch tick closer to the moment. Ring. Right on time. I answered. Nothing. Just dead air. No tone. No static. Just silence. But it wasn't empty silence. It was the kind that feels full, like someone else is on the line, holding their breath. I said hello a few times. No response. Just the dead weight of someone or something listening. I hung up. Did it again the next night, and the next. A full week of it. Every night, the same thing. Silence. Eventually, I gave up. Told myself it was a glitch. Some forgotten telecom process left to rot. I stopped answering. A month passed. Then came October. The air got colder. Leaves began to fall. The woods around the campground turned skeletal and still. That kind of still where every twig snap sounds like a gunshot. For no real reason, I decided to answer the phone again. It was the first week of October. I set the alarm, stood by the phone in the chill. 4:17 a.m. Ring. I picked up. This time, I didn't get silence. This time, I heard breathing. Not normal breathing, strained, tight, like someone inhaling through clenched teeth. It rasped through the receiver like static, twisted into a lung full of pain. Then a voice. Low, ragged, like it was being forced out of a broken throat. Like someone gargled gravel and was still spitting out dust. And it said my name. My full name. First, middle, last. Perfect pronunciation. I froze. The phone felt molten in my hand. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I hung up.
My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my change trying to use the phone's keypad. I finally got it together, jammed a few quarters in, and hit 69 to trace the last call. The number was real. It came from California. I live in Indiana.